Hi, this video is all about the details of the individual layers, so how to see them, and particularly around the credits and citations for those individual layers. So that's why I've started here on the actual place in which the map loads to. So you start with all the logos, people involved with making the map. But the first page you're taken to is this information about citations. So this is the high-level view of the citations for all the layers that are in the map, but you don't know which citations apply to which layers. And so that's what you'll be able to see with the details bit. So if we go, and we have to get down to an individual layer here. And so if we go look at the domestic EPCs, and you can see that this is a final layer as opposed to still being inside a group. And if we click on the three dots, we can see that we have our details page. So we can click details, and that's going to take us to a new window. And so ArcGIS calls this the item page. So this is the item page behind the domestic EPCs. And this is where you can see the credits that are associated with this specific layer, as well as the terms of use. So in addition to the title at the top, we also have a short summary, as well as a description. In the description, we're trying to follow a loose Vancouver type of citations. So you'll see numbers written in the descriptions as well that point you to the source at the bottom here. And here we only have one layer that sits within this item, but I'll show you another example where we can have multiple layers that sit within one item. And then I mentioned the terms and uses. So here we had quite a lot of terms and uses, or terms of use, because we have them both for the source data as well as for the spatial data. And so this is where, particularly when we're working with spatial data, we're often taking something that existed as, say, only like an Excel file or a CSV, and then it had some amount of spatial data, something that we could use as a unique identifier to join it to a different type of data. So in this case, each of these EPCs had a unique property reference number, but that itself doesn't make it spatial. But the Ordnance Survey produces another data set that is spatial, and we use the unique property reference number to relate the source data of the EPCs to that spatial data of the Ordnance Survey. So you'll also see that in the credits. If you see something that says source data, and then it has the semicolon, and then it says spatial data, so that's trying to separate which credits belong to which parts of the data. So here, the source data is from the Scottish Government, that's the EPCs, but the spatial data, also I misspoke, the Ordnance Survey does have UPRNs, but we were actually using the Office for National Statistics UPRNs because they have a higher level of completeness, so they just have more of all of the points. So here, and this is why credits matter, so you get the proper attribution to the people who the data actually came from. So our UPRNs were from the Office of National Statistics, but even then, they used a bunch of other people's data in making their data source. So it's this whole chain of credits here of everyone who was involved in the making of that bit of data. So that's why we have a really long credit citation here for the domestic EPCs. And the other things you can see on this item page, you can see the last time the item was updated. So that's in terms of when this description was actually updated. But if you come over here to see when the data was updated, at the moment, these are the same day, but when we update this in the future, when new EPCs come out, we won't necessarily update the description here. So this item update will stay the same. But if you want to know when the data that's actually attached to this item description was updated, that would be this update date here. And I think that's the main things you need to know from this item page. If you wanted to see this in a map by itself, you can open it in Map Viewer, but otherwise we can go back to our main map and I'll show you an example of one that will have more than one layer that sits within the one item. So here we've gone to energy supply, and if we go to these energy supply points, you can see that there's a bunch of different layers here that you can turn on and off, though you do have to click on an individual one in order to see the details page. And here we've uploaded these all together. They were already a map when we put them into the system. And so if we scroll down to the layer section, you can see that all of these layers sit within this one item page. So they all have the same metadata in this item page because they sit together. You can click on the individual layers, but we haven't filled out the information there because all the information here relates to those layers. So for the most part, the item page usually only has one layer, but sometimes it has more than one. Here we can again see our terms of use and our credits. Here we have a shorter credit system because this data had coordinates to it, so we could make it spatial without having to join it to anyone else's data. So it itself was able to be made spatial. Something to note that because we can't do indentations as you would normally do with a block quote, so this is a very liberal use of a block quote, since we've copied quite a lot of the description information from the source data. So if we've copied information and we can't do just quotations because it's too much information to put in quotations, it's in italics. But again, we've indicated the source of that data at the bottom, and you can go to a link to see where that came from. So here we can say that description was copied from this source, which is number 2, and then you can go get it. The reason we didn't want to summarize and put this in our own words is particularly when people are using AI systems to try to read and find information, it's helpful if it's actually written in exactly the same way as the other source. So, but we don't want to do plagiarism, so hence why it's all cited there as well. And again, pointing out the data update date and the item update date. So here you can actually see that the data was updated on March 31st, but the description was updated by me right now. So that's why those two dates are different. And if we go back to the map, so far I've shown you the details of only layers that we've uploaded, but the map consists of layers that are both things that we've put into the ArcGIS Online system, but also things that other people have put on ArcGIS Online that we've pulled into our map. So then we can go and you'll see someone else's item page for their layers. So one of the examples is under biodiversity. There's the bug life maps. And if we open the details there, once we get past the loading, that's because it's wanting to load in all of the bug network at the moment. There we go. You can see it's about species interconnectedness from my understanding of this layer. So here you can see that this is a feature layer, but it's been uploaded by someone else. This is Tom Thompson at Bug Life. You can also see that under this owner bit, so it's Tom Thompson. It's not someone from the ECCI. So we don't have control over any of the information that is on this page, but because it's within the ArcGIS Online system, specifically within the Living Atlas, we can then within seconds pull it into our map and start to see and use it alongside our layers. But you can see they have the same information here: summary, description, the layer itself, terms of use, credits. Because the ArcGIS Online is still a new environment and people will upload things that they don't necessarily intend to be used by other people, sometimes you'll open layers and this information is entirely blank. You can still pull it into the map to use it. But in those instances, we've made an assumption then of how they would like the information to be cited and still included that credit in that starting citation page. So we can also pull in data that isn't on ArcGIS Online or isn't directly. So I'll give you an example of that. So if we come to buildings and we go to the council buildings, this is the City of Edinburgh Council's land and owned buildings. And now they're hosting on their own server and still connecting that server to ArcGIS Online. But what it means that when you go to their details page, it doesn't look like the standard item page. That's because you're getting this is a REST API. So you're pulling data again from their own server. So you don't have nearly as much detail as you do on an item page. But you can still see where this came from. So we can still see that the owner, we can assume that the owner is the council, and this is nested within their different service areas within the service directory of the REST API. So if we go to home, we can see all the data that they're currently hosting through their servers. And the way that we got this into the map is if you click on any individual layer and get it down to the layer that you want to show, like the perspective heat network zones here, you can then use the URL here and add it to the map that way, which is what we've done to get information in. So there's less information here, but you can still see the details. Again, for these ones that don't have a really clear way of citing them, we've made some assumptions of how this layer would like to be cited. And one last instance is where you have even less information on where a source came from within the map. Is when you pull something in through a web map service. It's a WMS. And so one of the examples here, and actually the only one on the map, is you can see, so we have our own energy supply points, but then we've also pulled in this web map service from the Scotland heat map. And this allows us to pull in that citation or pull in layer symbology for their layers, but you can see we can't click on them and they're not appearing in our legend, which is why we've gone ahead and made our own points that kind of mirror them. So if you wanted to actually see some more information behind these energy supply points, you could use the point layer here, but you do have to turn them on individually at the moment. But you can overlay that with the more detailed symbology. But if you actually go to the details for this page, there's hardly any details here because it's being pulled through this web map server. Though a little bit of a trick to sometimes figure out a bit more of the origin behind a layer here. So I'm pressing F function key and then F12, which on my computer opens up this network section. And so I can see a little bit behind the numbers because you can see there's nothing in the numbers that tell you, or in the metadata that's here, that tells you where this came from. But opening this up, I can see a little bit that at least I can see that this came from the heat map. I happen to know this is the Scotland heat map, but still that doesn't help me actually get to the origin of this. But in this case, we've basically copied that same data, but put it over into a layer that you can actually interact with. And when you go to the details of this one, which we've already shown, this links you to the direct source of that data if you did want to see more behind it, but felt that you can't because of the limited information in the current details page. So the vast majority of them will just be ArcGIS Online item pages like this. So hopefully that makes it more simple to extract information to know more about the layers. Again, particularly the credits and citations to document where all this information has come from.